today. First of all, I wish to express my biggest gratitude for all of you who tune in today, despite the stressful lockdown at the moment for being homebound and homeschooling for all the Cine-siders. We have a great registration and hopefully a wonderful turn up for our session today. So let me introduce all our Cine Meetup leaders. You know what? Before, oh, someone start the recording for me. Thanks, Royston. Let me introduce all our Cine Meetup leader. If you have not known about us, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to contact us anytime. If you're in not a Cine Meetup member yet, we welcome you to really join this group or the chapter to get notified of all future events. You can easily contact us by navigating to the Cine Meetup group link here. We are very, very honored today to have invited Shefreen from NJC Labs to share with us a very hot MuleSoft topic, designing apps for Runtime Fabric. His demo will also cover the logging, monitoring, and object store persistent part within a Runtime Fabric environments. So just a brief agenda. We will be starting off with a few key announcements while waiting for many more of you to join in before diving into the speaker content today. I hope all of you stay until the end of the sessions as we have a final trivia contest at the end and we will be giving a lot of wonderful MuleSoft prizes and goodies to the winner. So throughout these sessions, all audience line will be muted. So please feel free to use the Q&A link that just shared on the chat window by myself. I'll continue sharing the link again. If you have any questions, please post it using the Q&A link. Don't put it on the chat window. The presenter slides and recording will be shared with all the registered attendees for within the 24 to 48 hours after these events. You just need to navigate back to the same page that you registered for the event today, and you'll find the recording and the slide to download. Without further ado, so I'm going to hand it over to Royston to start the announcement. So Royston, I will help you to just drive the slide while you're going through the announcement for all our attendees today.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eva. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a good day today. Just kicking off with some announcements. First up, we have a number of connectors that have been either released for the first time or have been updated over the last few weeks. Something that would probably catch a lot of people's eye is that we now have a Snowflake connector available on Exchange. So for anyone who is integrating with Snowflake, previously, you could do this, via the JDBC driver, but now there is a dedicated connector available. So beyond that, we also have connectors being launched for AWS Lambda, Redshift, and Excel Online. And then we have a few updates for some existing connectors as well. So highly recommend you just keep an eye on the connectors that you're using already, just to see that they're either on a recent version or update them to the most recent version, just so you have the most reliable experience. Next slide, please, Eva.
Yep.
Thank you. So next up, I want to introduce Teams. So some of you may have caught this announcement in some of our other channels or meetups, but for anyone who has missed it, it is quite an important one. So a new feature has been launched within the Anypoint platform, specifically around access management, and that's called Teams. So this is very different to Microsoft Teams, completely separate, even though the purple might be confusing. So with Teams, what we are doing is we are reimagining the way that permissions and users are managed within the platform. So many of us will be familiar about roles and permissions in the past. What's happening is that teams are taking over from roles. And so just like in an organization that we might work in, we will have multiple teams. So you might be part of the integration team, which is part of the IT team, which is part of your organization. You can now have the same structure set up within the Anypoint platform for access management. So for example, you can have an integration admin team, you can have an integration developer, and these can be part of the integration team. And the benefit of this is that you can now manage permissions in a much more scalable way. So when someone joins your team, it is as simple as adding them to your team, and everyone in the team can have the same set of permissions associated with them. It is a much nicer way of doing things, and it's long overdue. And the good news is that currently it is opt-in. So you don't have to experience a change if you don't want to. However, I strongly recommend that you look through the documentation and the blog. The links are on the slide here and will be made available later. And then actually, if you have administrator rights in your org and you're responsible for this, please set up your teams sooner rather than later. So that way, people in your organization can take benefit of this, and it's going to make your life easier when you have people joining and leaving the team going forward. So for the next few months, this is going to be opt-in, but eventually this is going to replace everything to do with roles in the platform. So just bear that in mind. If you want to experiment with teams, the opt-in process is fully reversible, so you can test it out. Alternatively, you can create a trial org and test it in your trial org. Next slide, please, Eva. Move on. Next slide, please. All right, so just some updates around Runtime Fabric versioning. So since we have an audience over here that's interested in Runtime Fabric, I wanted to mention that if you are using Runtime Fabric at the moment, when you are deploying to Runtime Fabric, historically you would only have been given an option to deploy to a specific runtime version, whereas now we're more explicit with which version, monthly version of a runtime you're deploying to. So the change that you'll notice is that when you pick your version of the runtime, you'll notice that the month is mentioned next to it. And this is very consistent with how Cloud Hub works, because Cloud Hub is also on a monthly patch, and on-premise runtimes also are now being updated, or updates are being released on a monthly frequency. So the idea is that we want the same code base, or the runtime code base, to be available no matter where you deploy your Mule applications. So if you are using Runtime Fabric, you would have probably already noticed this change, but just keep in mind that it was introduced less than 2 weeks ago now, and this is the way it will be going forward as well. All right, next slide, please. So since you are already at a meetup, we already know that you're familiar with the goodness of meetups and why you should join one. I do want to call out that there are some other meetup groups globally that are also running. The first of which is the online meetup group. Now, the online group had an event earlier today, the recording of which should be available later today, where they talked about the company Bayer. There is also a meetup group for Java developers, which is being launched on the 21st of July. So if you are a person with a Java background and you want to gather with like-minded people, you can choose to join that meetup as well. Since we are in a pandemic, a lot of meetups are still online, and therefore you can join no matter where you are in the world, just like we have a number of people here based in Sydney. The links are available in the online group, as well as any other group that has an event coming up as well. All right. Eva, are you able to progress to the next slide?
I have already moved it to the next one.
Yeah. Right, this is perfect. There's a bit of a lag on my side.
Yeah.
There is a type of meetup being introduced as well, and that is going to be industry meetup. We have seen that customers have a desire to speak in their industries from other organizations. And some of the more popular industries where customers are asking for this are the healthcare and life sciences, finance, public sector and government, retail and consumer goods, and communications, media, and technology. So think of these as user groups that are focused around a certain industry, and we are looking to start groups for each of these industries. Now, yearning to either lead a meetup group or have a strong interest in any of these industries, you can have the group or being part of the leadership for that group. We would love to have speakers for these groups as well. These are very, very specialized. Speaking, there's an email address on, send an email to Mariana, and she's currently collecting interested speakers and matching them with leaders so that we can spin up these industry meetup groups. At the moment, at this point in time, the plan is for these groups to be global, and eventually we might be regionalizing them. But if you have a strong interest in this space, even if it's not one of these industries, maybe it could be higher education as an example, please reach out to the developer relations team using that link that's in there. As a reminder, all speakers and contributors do get rewarded as part of the community. So quite often that would be training, but you might also get access to the MuleSoft product team or other goodies that are quite exclusive. Next slide, please, Eva. All right, moving on to Friends of Max. So for those who are not aware, Friends of Max actually turned 1 last week. It's quite a momentous occasion. So in the last 1 year, there have been 46 videos released as part of Friends of Max. And if you haven't seen any of them, you've been missing out, because these videos will save you a lot of time, because they help explain topics in a very short, concise way with a good level of detail, and you can share it with the team. So I want to call out that the top videos of June are now mentioned on screen. And there is a new video available in the last month, which is best practices for Exchange, which all of us can find relevant. So encourage you to subscribe to Friends of Max using the links on the slide here, or alternatively, there is a YouTube channel available with all the videos as well. Excellent. Move on to the next slide, please. All right, that concludes the intro. So thank you for your patience while listening to the announcements. There is going to be a feedback survey that comes out within the next 2 hours. Please fill it up so that we have an opportunity to help improve this meetup, as well as pass on our thanks to Shefreen. That's the best place you can say thank you. And lastly, if you want to contribute, you can either contact the organizer on the event page, or you can email meetups@mulesoft.com with any of your ideas, and the team will get back to you. With that, that concludes my intro. I'll now pass on to Eva or Shefreen to take us.
Thank you so much, Royston. Thanks for sharing with us all the wonderful announcements. So let's move on with our speakers, Shefreen today. Shefreen is going to introduce himself and also a very brief agenda before diving into the topic. So let me just stop sharing, and Shefreen is going to start sharing his screen.
Sure. Thanks, Royston. Thanks, Eva. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Let me share my screen.
So while waiting, yep. Okay, we can see a screen.
Great. Let me just make it full screen and get the pointer enabled. All right. You can see my screen well and
yes,
properly, right? All right.
Yes.
So I'll start with my introduction. My name is Shefreen. I have about 15 years of experience in the IT and telecom industry. I am based out in Sydney. I work as an integration practice lead here at NJC Labs, Australia. Here is my LinkedIn profile for those who may wish to, connect with me. So now I'll move on to the agenda. So we'll start with the Runtime Fabric introduction. So we'll have the overview of RTF on self-managed Kubernetes. We will then discuss about the persistent object store feature released in RTF recently. We will then have the log externalization options explored for RTF, and after that we will move to the demo. So the demo will cover object store persistency, the migration of object store from Cloud Hub to RTF as a use case scenario, and while doing all this demo, we will have the logging and monitoring checked through ELK tool. Sure. Let's start with the Runtime Fabric overview.
Sorry, Shefreen, just 1 second. Would you mind just click on the height so that you can hide the bar at the bottom?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sure. Thanks for that,
Thanks.
Eva.
Yep.
All right. So as you all are aware, MuleSoft have various deployment options. So we have Cloud Hub, we have on-prem, we have private cloud edition, then there is Runtime Fabric. With Runtime Fabric is all about containerization of the Mule application. So with Runtime Fabric, we can deploy Mule applications into containers in a Kubernetes cluster rather than standalone servers or VM machines like in the case of other deployment models. Now, with when we say it's container based, the Mule applications, it's sort of platform independent. When I say platform independent, the Mule application can be deployed across the cloud. It can be Azure, it can be AWS, it can be Google Cloud, or even any of the on-prem data centers. Now, The RTF is actually built on Docker and Kubernetes to automate and orchestrate the deployment out of the box. So you really don't need the expertise on Docker and Kubernetes, even though with RTF on self-managed Kubernetes, so there are two flavors of Runtime Fabric. There is RTF appliance, and then there is RTF on self-managed Kubernetes. So for RTF on self-managed Kubernetes, you need the Kubernetes expertise. Now, let's talk about the multiple runtime version feature. With RTF, you can actually deploy Mule applications into various runtime versions. So say, for example, an application X can be deployed into version 4.3, application Y into 4.1, and application Z can even be deployed into runtime version 3.9. So that's a great deal of flexibility available there. Now, the deployment and management of Runtime Fabric Runtime Fabric and the application can be done through all familiar Runtime Manager within the Anypoint platform. So you really don't need to learn anything new, in order for the deployment of applications into Runtime Fabric. Now, so the RTF actually provides all the Cloud Hub model benefits, such as high availability, load balancing, automatic failover, rolling upgrades, etc. Like I discussed before, we have got two flavors or two types of Runtime Fabric. Runtime Fabric Appliance. With Appliance, customer will have to arrange the infrastructure, and MuleSoft provides the Docker and Kubernetes, and the Runtime Fabric services is shipped or packaged along with that. The second model here, shown here, this is Runtime Fabric for Runtime Fabric on self-managed Kubernetes. Again, infrastructure part here, customer will be is responsible for that. On top of that, the Kubernetes cluster needs to be created, configured, and managed by customer. And this can be any of the managed Kubernetes. This can be from any of the managed Kubernetes providers like AWS, Azure, or Google. So those are EKS Elastic Kubernetes Service, AKS Azure Kubernetes Service, and Google Kubernetes Engine. Now, these worker nodes also need to be configured. These worker nodes can be manually configured or automatically configured. So if you have a auto scaling enabled, all this node configuration would be quite, automatic along with the node group. Now, the Runtime Fabric is installed on top of this infrastructure configuration, and the Runtime Fabric services part will then take care of the deployment of Mule runtime and applications into the worker nodes, like you see here. There are a few more additional things we'll have to provision as part of the Runtime Fabric on self-managed Kubernetes. So the load balancer and ingress controller, which actually routes the incoming request into Mule applications into the Kubernetes cluster, we need to configure load balancer and ingress controller. And also the log forwarding in self-managed Kubernetes. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a log forwarder, except if you have a Titanium subscription. All other subscription, unfortunately, the logging solution, we will have to provision on our own. We will discuss about the logging solutions in the upcoming slides. Let's just conclude the overview by discussing the benefits. So we have a great deal of flexibility when it comes to RTF on self-managed Kubernetes. So we can actually choose from a number of Kubernetes providers, like I mentioned before, and these deployment targets, all these different cloud or on-prem, can be changed easily because of the containerized nature of the applications. It can be changed just with few clicks without redesigning the application. So that's actually a big benefit. Also, the memory allocation is very flexible with RTF. So with Cloud Hub, as you are aware, we have against a 0.1 Vico worker, we have a 500 MB of memory. But with RTF, against the same amount of Vico, we can have memory allocated as 1 GB, 2 GB, depending upon your application requirement. And also, when it comes to the worker size, we can start from as low as 0.02 Vico compared to 0.1 in the case of Cloud Hub. So for the same amount of Vico license, we can have more applications in RTF running. We also have less overhead in RTF because this is compared to the on-prem deployment. Obviously, Cloud Hub is the least overhead, without doubt. But in RTF compared to on-prem, because all these managed Kubernetes providers are highly available, it's actually less overhead to the customer. And coupled with auto scaling and node groups feature helps to maintain absolutely minimum number of computing nodes when required. So it can automatically, with auto scaling, the nodes can auto scale when more applications or there are resource requirements in terms of CPU or memory. So that concludes the overview. Let's move on to the object store persistence feature in RTF. So all this while, RTF was missing this key feature of object store persistency. And with the latest release of 1.9, we have the endpoint runtime, we have the object store persistence available. Now, this object store persistence is achievable with the persistence gateway. So persistence gateway is a custom resource created within the Kubernetes cluster. And this custom resource, in turn, connects with a backend Postgres-based database. So we need to configure or provision also the Postgres database in the backend, which in our demo, we have used a AWS RDS-based service and a Postgres engine sitting on that. We will show that cover that in the demo. Now, with the persistence gateway, Mule applications, object store connector within the Mule applications can connect to the persistence gateway with the help of object store v2 REST API. Now, this is similar to the implementation in Cloud Hub, where Cloud Hub also communicates with object store object store v2 REST API, in the backend. So that facilitates the deployment of an application into both Cloud Hub and Runtime Fabric without modifying the Mule application. So that's actually a great feature to have now. Now, this is a snapshot of how the object store persistence is looking. So you can see with the latest version, you have the option of checking or selecting the persistence object store. Now, this is only available once you configure persistence gateway, the custom resource I talked about, and after that, this is available to be enabled. Now, like I said before, the object store in both Cloud Hub and object store in RTF, both are now based on object store v2 REST API in the backend. So this actually gives us a typical solution where let's say we need to migrate an application, the same application from Cloud Hub to RTF or vice versa. So a migration app can be created which can read the content from one object store and then do the necessary transformation and then upload or update that into the object store of the Runtime Fabric. We will cover this scenario in detail as part of the demo. Let's look at log externalization options next for RTF. So as I mentioned before, Runtime Fabric on self-managed Kubernetes, it doesn't have the logging out of the box, right? So for a Kubernetes cluster, there are three common approaches when it comes to logging. So the first option is the application within the pod itself, within the pod can communicate directly with the logging backend. But this, like I said before, only, this is not available with the self-managed Kubernetes. So we need to explore the other options. So the other two options are option 2, where the logging agent will sit alongside the application within the pod, and this logging agent will collect the logs from the container and then push it to the logging backend. So this is called a sidecar implementation. Unfortunately, this is not recommended much due to significant resource consumption. Imagine a case where so many applications are deployed and every application has a sidecar with the logging agent. So that actually takes up a lot of resources. The popular approach is the daemon set deployment. With the daemon set deployment, every single node within the Kubernetes cluster will have this logging agent installed, and this logging agent will in turn collect the log file, the logs from the log file, which will have all the logs in the machine in that node from the applications recorded. All the standard logs, std out or std, those will be available in this log file. So the logging agent will read them and then push it to the logging backend. A typical implementation of this scenario is shown here. So you can see here. So this is with ELK. Now, we have the Kubernetes cluster. We have different nodes, multiple nodes here as shown. The Mule applications are actually inside those nodes within the ports, and this beats here. So this is actually the daemon set logging agent sitting inside each of those nodes. It can be a file beat or a metric beat. File beat, which will collect the logs, and metric beat actually collects the metrics side of things, and then those are actually pushed to the Elastic server, and in turn then we can read the logs and metrics through Kibana interface. Now it's not just limited to Mule applications. Anything within the Kubernetes cluster or any other application, any other the Kubernetes or Docker related logs, everything, logs and metrics, everything is available with this solution. Again, this will be as part of the demo, we will be looking at the logs and this specific solution. So that concludes our theory side of things. So now let's get on to the demo. And we will start with the RTF cluster, how an RTF cluster is looking. We can look at it from AWS console, because I have a EKS a Kubernetes cluster, EKS-based RTF cluster. So we can start with the cluster in AWS, and then also look at the local machine CLI. We will then move on to the object store demo, the migration and persistence, and as part of whole demo, we'll be looking at the logs as I mentioned before. Okay, let's look at the logs to start with. Sorry, the cluster to start with. Can you see my AWS screen?
Yep.
All right, excellent. So this is the cluster. So as you can see here, this is the cluster I have created. So this is actually AWS EKS services. So you can actually similarly have it have the cluster created in Azure or Google. And more Kubernetes, managed Kubernetes services are to be launched soon for RTF. Now, the cluster will, once you click the cluster, you can see different, I'll just remove this, different nodes. There are 2 nodes actually, and there are workloads which are basically the services or deployments installed within the Kubernetes cluster. Now, let's just quickly look into a few other details. So if you look at the computing, so this is actually the node group, and within the node group you can actually specify the minimum size of nodes and maximum size of nodes. So currently, like I said, it's sitting at 2, but as soon as there is additional requirement for memory or CPU utilization, this will scale up, and it can scale up all the way up to 4 with the help of auto scaling. All right, let's look the same into the console. I'll just show you, I'll start with the nodes. So this kubectl will display, it's a command for, working with the Kubernetes cluster. So as you can see here, there are 2 nodes like I showed in the AWS console. And let's also look at the services. So these are the different services installed in the Kubernetes cluster. As you can see here, these are all RTF related services, and this persistence gateway is created, and this is the custom resource I was talking about. And this will actually communicate with the backend AWS RDS or Postgres based database. Let me quickly show you that. So this is actually a AWS RDS based Postgres engine I have created, and this is where the object store contents are actually getting stored. Let's go back to here. So there is this the application I have already deployed, demo application, where the migration we are going to demonstrate. So from Cloud Hub application, object store content will be migrated into this particular application. We also have the actual migration application sitting within the Kubernetes cluster. And this ingress controller, along with the load balancer, this is the one actually doing all the routing of the requests coming into the Kubernetes cluster into specific Mule applications or other applications. All right, finally, I'll just show the different ports. So for the demo application, I have 2 replicas. Replicas are equivalent to the multiple workers in Cloud Hub, and also for the OS migration app, also I have 2 replicas. The other thing I want to highlight is this file beat. This is the daemon set I was talking about for the logging. So this is the one collecting the logs from the nodes and sending those logs into the Elastic Cloud. Same with metric beat. This is collecting the metrics as pushing those metrics into the Elastic server, and then we can see them through Kibana. All right, so let's get move on. So this is the object store migrations scenario we are going to demonstrate. So uh, so one demo app sitting inside the Cloud Hub, multiple two workers, and that has the object store. The object store contents are shown here. So you have two partitions, persons and employees, just for demonstration purpose. The keys are shown here: ID, ID extra, ID string, employee ID, and token. So the purpose of this demo is actually to migrate the contents of this completely into the application deployed into RTF. So you can see the same application deployed as two replicas inside RTF, one here and one here. So those are the two replicas. That is also connected to the object store, which is backed up by the Postgres RDS service I have already shown you. So the migration app also is sitting there. So it's actually, there are two replicas. I already showed here, one replica, but there are actually two replicas. So one would be sitting here also. So with this migration app, this will read the contents from the object store, and that content will be actually binary based, and it will do the transformation of the binary value and some other logics applied, and then the content is updated into the object store of EKS cluster. So let's see this in action. Give me a second. I'll show you. Yeah. So this here is in my runtime manager, where you can see the application. So RTF demo OS, same application deployed in Cloud Hub, and this is my RTF cluster. So the same application deployed in two environments, and the intention is actually to migrating this from Cloud Hub to RTF cluster. So we can have the migration with the application stopped or running. So that's actually up to you. Either way it would work, because the persistency gateway is available in both cases, and the migration application is the one doing the trick. All right, now let's look into the migration itself. So I will start with so this is the Cloud Hub application, and you can see the application name here. I'll just get the object store content through Postman here. So you can see all the contents. So it's the keys I discussed before: ID, ID extra, key, ID string, all of them with the values. Now you can see. Now the application is again deployed also into Runtime Fabric. So let's poll this one. It should all be returned as null. So that means there is no values sitting there. So now, as part of the migration, we need to migrate the values what I showed in Cloud Hub object store to here. So we have this migration app, and I'm going to invoke it. Hopefully there is no error. I might sometime have to give the bearer token. Hopefully that's not expired. So let me just invoke it, and let's see what's happening. Yes, it says object store contents migrated to RTF. Let's see if it actually did the trick or not. Yes, so you see the RTF object store contents and Cloud Hub object store contents exactly the same. So it did, the migration app actually picked up all the values, did the necessary transformations, and updated those into the RTF this RTF object store. Great. Now let's look at the logs. So while doing all this, there would be a lot of logs, and as part of troubleshooting, you would need to see the logs and all, right? So let's look at that. So that logging would be the solution we discussed before, and let me show you there. So specific to that persistence gateway, I have the logging query already saved here. So you can see various log messages here, and you can see all those get and post method. This get is related to when we invoked the RTF application, and this post is actually when the migration actually happened. So it picked up the values from Cloud Hub object store and did the posting. So you can see all this. This format is specific to object store v2 REST API. All right, now we can also look at the other metrics specific to the actual demo application, you can see object store values retrieved. So initially when we retrieved it, there was null values, and this is the second retrieval after the migration happened, where you can where I already showed you the values after the migration. The other feature with ELK solution is the metrics. So we can have the whole infrastructure monitoring. As you can see here, this shows you the CPU usage of the two nodes, and you can also get the memory usage. So like you can see here, you can look at these things from a port perspective. So you can look at various ports, just point your cursor there, and then you can see CPU usage, memory usage, all those details. And you can also have the grouping of the same based on the namespaces. So these are all related to RTF. These are related to your Mule applications. This is the Ingress controller, and this is specific to Kubernetes. If you go back here with the host, and if you click there, there are nice, charts and all available with the metrics. You can also go into the logs. So all those flexibility with the logging is available. Great. So just going back to the presentation, I think we can wrap it up because we don't have too much time. RTF is actually, I mean, there are a lot to discuss about in RTF, but because we have a time constraint, this is actually, what I had decided, which could be useful, so especially with that object store persistence and all. So we discussed about Runtime Fabric overview. Its benefits were discussed. We also looked at the migration solution. Now with the persistence gateway feature, the persistency, and also how we can migrate a object store from Cloud Hub to RTF, or that the same can be done vice versa also, with this solution. And log externalization options, we looked at ELK, but then there are other solutions also. We can do it with Grafana, Prometheus, Loki, those sort of solutions. We can even have with Splunk, with the as a daemon set deployment. So there are various options. We just looked at ELK in this demonstration. All right. So any more details regarding the RTF or any other MuleSoft related topics, you can feel free to contact me at shefreen@njclabs.com. We at NJC Labs, we are MuleSoft SI and training partners specialized in enterprise integration. We can help actually accelerate your MuleSoft implementation and services using our in-house API Ops platform. Please reach out to us for details regarding the same. That's it from my side, Eva.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Shefreen.
a lot.
Thanks.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate
your
it.
contents. So the excitement moment, we want to reserve some time for Q&A. We have already got plenty of questions asked there. So if you don't mind, Shefreen, can you just stop sharing so that I can project the Q&A questions?
Sure, let me do that. Give me a second. Yeah. Should be here. Stop sharing.
Yeah, that's right. And I am going to put my screen up for the Q&A. Hopefully you can see the questions right here. So we can't promise to answer all questions. We'll try our best to answer as many questions as I can within these 10-15 minutes. So first questions for Shefreen. Well, first of all, before we jump into questions, all the recordings slide deck will be available to you within 24 to 48 hours on the same page, registration page. You can download it after this event. Someone asked about the licensing works for self-managed Kubernetes. I don't think we have time to address that, so feel free to reach out to any of the MuleSoft account executive. You can have more details about that, about the licensing, how it works, and also about the pricing. But we have some relevant technical question that we really want to pose it to the speaker today. So the first one is really asking about 0.02 call, any extra cost for persistent gateway, and also the log to Splunk.
Yeah, so 0.02, small applications can definitely work even with 0.02. But when I say 0.02, it's not just limited to 0.02. There is actually also an option of the pooling where you can set a high limit. So you have a node with, let's say, one core, and if you set 0.02 and set the higher limit as 1, whenever there is additional requirement, it can always take in from the node resources. So it's not a it's not a fixed allocation of 0.02 itself, that flexibility is there. Now, extra cost of persistence gateway, it's actually, there is no extra cost from a RTF perspective. It's only the provision of resources you will have to do in the backend, so that will be, slight extra cost. So in my demo case, I have demonstrated the AWS RDS service, and with the RDS having the Postgres engine. So that, whatever cost for, running that would be the extra. I can say there is nothing else. Can we log directly to Splunk, etc. from AKS, or do we need agent installed options? We can actually, but with the base subscription, we can't actually log directly to with the Titanium subscription. I believe there are options available for fixing up with the Splunk, but with the other subscriptions we need to install the agents. There is no configuration from within the Anypoint platform where you can actually link up with Splunk or any other solutions. Yeah,
Yep.
that's about those questions.
Very good questions, Krishant. Thank you so much. And the next one, migration apps. I believe it is a custom built Mule apps. Well, Shefreen, if you can confirm that.
Yeah, it is a custom built app, and it is more like a POC. So
Yeah.
so I have actually built this specifically for this purpose of migration either way, from
Okay.
Cloud Hub to RTF or RTF to Cloud Hub. But yeah, it's not advice at this stage to use in production or anything. It needs actually a lot of testing and all. I'm still
Yep.
actually getting those done.
And someone have a very interesting ask. Can you show the code and the design of migration apps?
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
I'll actually be probably sharing the same in the GitHub. So I need a lot of cleanup and all for the
Mm.
code. So it's very raw at this stage. But I'll along with the the resources, I could share the code also for people to
Thank
look
you
into.
so much, Shefreen, for your prototype or sample project. So next questions from an anonymous persistent gateway support Azure table storage.
Um,
This is a little bit out of topic because I know today you are focusing on the AWS. Just
yeah.
wonder if you know the answer. Otherwise, you can get back to folks or
Yeah, I'm not very sure about this, but I can actually, check on that and get back to. But
oh,
it's
okay.
anonymous, so I'm not sure, how to reach out there.
Anyone interested, just drop an email to
Yes,
Shefreen's, he
that's
or
right.
she.
I can
Shefreen will be
explore
happy to.
that. Get back to.
No
Yeah,
worries.
as long as it's a
Yep,
database backed by Postgres engine. So and
yep,
currently it's only the Postgres based database engine, persistent gateway support, nothing else. So I'm not sure if that helps in any way
yep.
for that question.
Whoever asked that questions, if you like to know more details, drop an email to Shefreen. So let's look at next one from Ranjit. Can you post the link of about log forwarding?
Yeah, sure. So I have I'm yet to finish the blog. Probably I'll finish the blog and then share that article. So I have everything captured. It's just a matter of putting together in a blog, and that would then be available for how to configure this log forwarding. Yeah.
Thanks, Shefreen, for sharing with us more resources. And can RTF on AKS or EKS support horizontal auto scaling?
Yes, 100%. So both horizontal and vertical can be configured. So, but this one is not something you can configure from the runtime fabric or from the Anypoint platform. This is something we'll have to provision through the respective cloud providers. So, in the case of AKS through AWS, auto scaling feature. In the case of EKS, and similarly for Azure also. So that is
No.
very much possible.
Okay, no worry. Next questions. One some other challenging part apart from object store, loggings,
Yeah, so there are a lot of other topics. You can look at the security, which is definitely, something of a challenge, because when it comes to TLS termination, that is actually something you need to decide whether to do it at the load balancer side, or within the ingress controller, or at the application side. So there are various, a lot of other topics when it comes to, the RTF. And Kubernetes environment.
no worries. Need to find out more? You got to email Shefreen.
Sure.
Okay, next questions. Persistent gateways are available for public now.
Absolutely. So from the last version onwards, this one is available for public. Before that, it was actually, I believe, in the trial phase, but from the latest version, it's all available.
No worries. Okay, next question. I probably want to transfer this to Royston because someone asked about the role and teams. Is that going to be continued in parallel?
So, yes, it will be continuing in parallel for the next few months, but the horizon is less than 12 months. So, in about 11 months' time, the plan is to deprecate. Actually, roles are already deprecated, but in 12 months' time, roles will be phased out completely, with teams being the new way of managing permissions. So, you still have some time remaining before you have to make any changes.
Yep. The other question is about the free trial. I believe we do have 30 days. Try correct me if I'm wrong, Royston.
I think it's a maybe for trial accounts. If you are already a MuleSoft customer, the easiest person to talk to would be your customer success manager. And if you are not a MuleSoft customer, then just reach out to the MuleSoft team on MuleSoft Contact. It's not as straightforward as trialing out other things in the platform. However, it is possible.
Yeah, thank you, Royston. And we only have questions. I have enough time for one last question, Shefreen. So someone asked about the key value pair. Do you have any comment on this?
Key value pairs from object store be visible in both Cloud Hub and RTF and on-prem at same time for a hybrid model. Is that same what you showed in the demo? So in the demo, what I have showed is around the Cloud Hub and RTF. So I haven't shown anything, specific to the on-prem. So in on-prem, the object store persistency is achieved through file storage, not through any backend database. So so the what I showed in the demo was specific to Cloud Hub and RTF, and previously RTF didn't have that persistency, and with the latest version release, we have that persistence gateway feature available, and through that, both Cloud Hub and RTF, it's Object Store v2 API in the backend, making it possible for those persistency and also the migration.
Okay, thank you so much. And we conclude the Q&A sessions, and we are going to move on to the trivia parts, the interesting parts. But before that, thank you so much for all your attendees, and also thanks for our speaker today. If you have any further questions, if things that is not addressed, if you are keen to speak to us, communicate to us, feel free to reach out. And Shefreen has very open door policy to welcome any question and request. Yeah.